you're experiencing menopause, you're not sure, you're not at that stage, or simply here just to understand a bit more, to prepare yourself, you're very, very welcome. An end to menopause misery, that's what I want. I want this to be the last generation that struggles with it, frankly. And I don't just mean women, I'm talking about our families, our partners, colleagues, and men, to help all of us understand better what the implications are and what they can do to help, as well as what we can do to help ourselves. I'm 53 and well into perimenopause. I'll talk a bit more about that in a sec. About 3 years ago, I think I started having symptoms. And this is the thing, it's hard to know sometimes. They can be very, very stealthy. But I think it was about 3 years ago I started having perimenopausal symptoms, but I didn't really realize that's what it was. I was waking up in the middle of the night at sort of 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, having palpitations. I was getting odd, unexplained joint aches. Went to the doctors, had chiropractic. It didn't really help. I have dry eyes, and I think the main symptom I started to experience was brain fog and memory issues. So if when you've got that word on the tip of your tongue but you just can't reach it, if that happens the next 20 minutes, please bear with me. It's all part of the fun and games of menopause. But actually I think I was quite lucky, because it was around the start of the menopause, there we go. It was the start of the COVID lockdown. Unfortunately, I was employed then and invited by my then employer to a webinar about menopause, which really helped me and gave me some really helpful solutions. 2 years ago, therefore, I dropped caffeine. I don't drink tea and coffee anymore with caffeine in it. I reduced my intake of sugar and alcohol, which can all stimulate the response to menopausal symptoms. I've experienced weight issues over my life, and I rejoined Slimming World, and I've lost 1.5 stone, which is also helping a lot with my symptoms. I now sleep through the night, and that's helping me cope, I suppose, with the symptoms that are still present. I'm seeing a chiropractor again, which is really helping with the joint mobility, and done things like see my optician, who's recommend really good eye drops for the eyes, because it turned out I did have a slight condition in my eyes, which has since cleared up. But this all made me think, how many women out there have no idea what's going on in their own bodies and simply aren't getting the help they need. And that's really catapulted me into doing what I do now. So I'd love to know, just pop in the chat, where do you think you are in this journey? I'm going to explain a bit more about the stages, but if you know, do pop in the chat what's going on for you right now in this space. So as you've guessed, and I'm breaking Kirsty's rule, but I am Karen. I am the co-founder of Mentrix Menopause Expertise with my sister Sarah, who I think is on the call somewhere. Give us a wave, Sarah, if you're there.
Hi, everyone.
Our mission is to give you the information and support you need to prepare for and navigate menopause and beyond, with really clear information and helping you to empower change yourself. We do this through webinars, through coaching and training for individuals and groups, and consultancy for organisations. I'm a former corporate careerist, so I know a bit about working, over 30 years in corporate, and I changed direction to do this earlier this year. But that's another story, and we're not here to talk about me, but know that I'm an executive coach, a workplace coach, mental health first aider, and using emotional intelligence frameworks to help people improve their work life and relationships, and now passionate about helping people through menopause. And I just wanted to say, I live in Cirencester in Gloucestershire, and I think there's quite a lot of you who might not live too far away, so do pop in the chat where you live, and if you'd like to connect, that would be great. So on to the business. What is menopause? Why are we hearing so much more about it now, and what can you do to support yourself? I'm going to share a bit of information on menopause itself, because I think it helps to understand what sits behind it and what causes it. And then you can look at how to actually help yourself in the specific ways that will make sense for you. And I've got a special offer for you near the end, and I'm going to help you find more information and resources on our website to do that. And I just want to say, I think nearly everybody on the call is a woman, but I'm going to use the word woman a lot in this next 20 minutes, because menopause is a biologically and hormonally, female hormonally driven process, but really inclusive. So if there's anybody who, you know, without ovaries, who still identifies as a woman, then you're obviously absolutely welcome. So what is it? What is this thing called menopause? So it's, as I say, a natural biologically driven process, normally starts between the ages of 45 to 55. For most women, you know, the typical kind of bell curve distribution comes into play here. The average age is 51 when menopause actually occurs for women. But I think one of the kind of myths or confusions about menopause is the stages and the fact that symptoms occur at different stages. So in the kind of series of stages, we have premenopause, perimenopause, and then postmenopause. And as I say, I think that's what is helpful to understand. Premenopause is when whatever is normal in terms of, you know, your menstrual health to you is happening. So obviously not everybody has regular periods, but whatever is normal for you, that's premenopause. Perimenopause is this period of transition between what's normal and premenopause, moving towards menopause. And it's caused by the decrease in 3 key female hormones in our bodies: estrogen, which you may well be aware of, progesterone, and also, and this often is a surprise to people, we do produce testosterone in our bodies as women. Not perhaps in such greater proportions as in men. And obviously it's often something that we think of as more of a masculine hormone, but we do produce small amounts of it. So in perimenopause, and I think this is where the confusion comes, in perimenopause, those hormones are starting to decrease or fluctuate actually in perimenopause. And that's, again, what can cause some very strange symptoms. Menopause itself is essentially just one period, forgive the pun, in time, one day in time even, medically defined as a year since you had your last period. So it's assumed, because you've gone a year without period, that you're now in menopause. And then post is obviously the time that follows for the rest of a woman's life after that. And I say it usually occurs between 45 and 55 because you can experience menopause sooner. And 1 in 100 women experience menopause before the age of 40. And apparently 1 in 1,000 experience it far younger, some in their late teens or in their 20s. And there's a fabulous organisation specifically supporting women who experience early menopause called the Daisy Network, which I really recommend. If you know anybody who experiences that, then I highly recommend it. So talking of symptoms, apparently 9 in 10 women experience some set of symptoms around menopause. So one in 10 lucky women aren't actually impacted by negative symptoms at all. But they tend to be classified in different sort of categories. A lot of them are physical, things that you kind of feel and notice, but also mental and emotional. And I think those are the things that can actually cause women more challenge perhaps than the physical. So physical symptoms can include such things as, you know, irregular periods during that perimenopause phase, hot flushes and mood swings, which you might have heard of, these sort of classic, slightly sort of stereotypical menopause symptoms. But also a lot of women we've spoken to, and I think a lot of research has shown that symptoms such as brain fog, memory loss, I can certainly relate to that, poor concentration, feelings of irritability or lack of patience, leading to anxiety, and in some people depression can actually occur. And I think it's not surprising, is it, if you're having, you know, a really tough time during the day, not sleeping at night, you know, you're trying to get work done and you're struggling with all these feelings, then it's bound to have some sort of effect, and a lot of people do experience that. And what we hear from women in terms of what concerns them most is the need to bust all these, you know, myths and taboos, to update their own knowledge and understand what effect, you know, if this is way off for you or you're not at that stage yet, how that's going to affect you and how to deal with those symptoms when they occur. Also, you know, is HRT going to be right for me? What if I can't take HRT? How do I get the right support I want from my doctor, and so on. And at work, of course, a lot of people are concerned about the attitudes that they're coming into contact with at work, perhaps with their peers, their manager, or colleagues, and they're worried about the time that they might feel they need to take off if they're having a really bad day or had a terrible night, and are they going to be able to keep their job? But I think the overriding concern is they want to know that it's normal and they're not going mad, because a lot of these sort of mental and emotional symptoms can really play with our mental health sometimes. So if you take one thing away today, know that it's perfectly normal. You are not going mad. You're not incompetent or bad at your job or a bad human being. Help is available, and we're certainly here to support you with that. And you're not alone. It can, and I'm sure will get better. So in terms of what's actually happening now, of course, I was thinking, women have experienced menopause for thousands of years, right? Why is there all this talk about this now? But of course, it's been a topic very little discussed, socially, culturally. Many women were unaware of what was going on in their bodies, and it's all been surrounded by this myth and taboo. And that got me thinking about, well, surely women have been experiencing this for millennia. But tell me in the chat, what age do you think a woman's life expectancy was in the 1840s? Because I think it will surprise you. Less than 200 years ago. Oh, you've all read the same articles as me. Brilliant. Less than 200 years ago, menopause was proportionally far less likely to occur for most women because they died often before they got to that stage. The life expectancy in 1842 was 42. It wasn't until the early 20th century when life expectancy got to the age of 55. Coupled with the change in demographics, half the population are women. We've got 13 million menopausal women in the UK, and almost half of the workforce are women, and almost a third of them are menopausal. So these are big numbers. And so I think, the imperative is pretty clear. Over the last 50 years, far more women, the growth in numbers of women at work have really grown, whereas as the numbers of working men proportionately have dropped. We're both in the sort of 50th percentile now. And of course, with programs like Davina McCall's programs, if you've not seen them, they're a mine of really useful information. They're available on channel4.com. I'd really recommend them. They're only 40 odd minutes each because there are no ads if you watch them on catch up. They're really insightful and give you lots of background and help and support as well. And with the likes of Mariella Frostrup and Penny Lancaster jumping on board as well, I think it's really brought the topic to the fore. There's been a lot of talk about menopause support for women and in greater society, but also at work. In government, there's a cross-party committee of women which has been set up, and they're working really hard to bring us into the 21st century in terms of support for women. They even made some recommendations about the inclusion of menopause in the Equalities Act 2010, which, as many of you know, is an act of Parliament which brought together a bunch of previous legislation to help to make illegal and to prevent discrimination on the basis of various characteristics like age, sex, gender, disability. That part was actually rejected, but the government set out a 10-year strategy to help raise awareness of the issue and encourage employers to do more themselves, which is a great step forward. And I think we'll do a lot to support women both at work and without, because apparently 1 in 10 women quit their jobs because of menopause. Actually do, about a quarter think about it. More people are able to make adjustments, but an awful lot of women don't feel able to even discuss making adjustments to their working pattern, if you like, because of those, because of menopause, because either shame or embarrassment or the response that they think they're going to get, which is a tragedy. And of course, that has a massive impact on not only the women's but families, financial health and income and pensions for later life, not to mention productivity in business. So what can we do about it? So there are 3 key ways in which women can get help with menopause symptoms. They involve hormonal treatment. You may have heard of HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy. There are non-hormonal treatments as well, if those aren't relevant for you, other medical interventions. And finally, thirdly, non-medical interventions, which I'll come back to. So HRT, I'm sure many of you have heard of the acronym. So it's essentially a replacement of the hormones that we've lost because of menopause, because of that decline in naturally produced hormones, chiefly estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen tends to be the most commonly applied, but if you still have a uterus, then progesterone is often prescribed in conjunction, because it helps. If you take your estrogen on its own, then that can cause issues with the lining of your uterus, so progesterone helps with that. But any conversation should be had with your GP or medical professional about HRT, because it really should be taken in conjunction with a conversation about any risks that are likely, versus the benefits to you personally. So they'll need to understand a lot about your medical history. The good news is with HRT is that a lot of people report almost immediate or almost immediate symptomatic relief from menopausal symptoms. The other good news is, as part of those government initiatives, in April just this year, the government announced financial help with the cost of HRT prescriptions. So this applies to you if you don't already have a prescription prepayment certificate for other medications that you might still already be on, then you can apply for this certificate purely for HRT, which means essentially that you get HRT over a year at half price, because it's essentially the cost of 2 prescriptions. And if a prescription lasts about a quarter, then that can really help. So yeah, talk to your GP about HRT. But although of course there are some people for whom HRT isn't going to be correct, there are non-hormonal but medical interventions where HRT, as I say, isn't advised, maybe due to a genetic or other pre-existing health condition. Perhaps where women have a history of estrogen receptive breast cancer, for instance. I know women who are taking tamoxifen post cancer, and then HRT is contraindicated. So those non-hormonal treatments are usually focused on the symptoms rather than replacing the hormones. So they could be, being prescribed medications that would ordinarily be to treat other conditions. For instance, maybe high blood pressure if you're suffering from a lot of those sort of vasomotor symptoms, or other mental health conditions perhaps have been known to and do provide some people with symptoms. And I know women who take a combination, some HRT and maybe a very low dose of antidepressant, for instance. But again, go and talk to your GP. And finally, that the non-medical interventions are frankly something that I think, whether you're taking HRT or not, is really good advice. So I've got 6 top 10 tips. Here we go. 6 top tips for you on HRT, on managing your menopause symptoms. Firstly, managing your stress. As many of you know, we have a stress hormone called cortisol, which is very helpful to us and helps us get done basically in the correct proportions, but when it's overexpressed, then it can not only put pressure on things like our hearts and muscles and digestive systems, but also suppresses those very hormones that we're trying to keep hold of. So try and control, try and manage your stress, find a way that works for you, like breathing exercises or meditation can also help. Get moving. It doesn't have to be high impact, walking, yoga, stretching, anything that relaxes you is going to be great for your hormone, heart and bone health as well. And eating a really varied diet, lots of fruit and vegetables. Eat the rainbow, is one of my nutritional therapist pals says. Concentrate on fruit and veg and lean protein. Cut down on that caffeine, processed food, sugar, alcohol, those stimulants that are going to stimulate perhaps the symptoms that you're already experiencing. I don't like the word selfish, but it's time really to get more sort of self-focused, more self-aware on the things that are going to help you. It may involve saying no to things, not being perhaps so generous with your time, so you've got the time and resources to focus on yourself to do these things, because the evidence is if we do, then we're much more resilient and much more able to cope with our symptoms. and get support. Talk to your friends and family. I know a lot of this sounds really simple, but it can be really effective. Talk to your friends and family, your colleagues. If you don't get immediate, support or help, join us. I'm going to share the link at the end. There's lots of information available out there, and there are, specialist, doctors and nurse prescribers who can support you. If I can put you in touch with them if you're not getting any joy from your doctor, but we've got some advice for you on how to prepare for those conversations. So in short, you're not going mad. If you're starting to experience symptoms, try and bring your awareness to that. You're not going mad. Know that self-care is not selfish and help is absolutely available. And as I say, to see your GP